Vance's father abandoned him. His mother was locked in an endless cycle of drug abuse that escalated to heroin. The toll it took on her young son is seared into memory.
I'm proud to say that tonight my mom is here. 10 years, clean and sober. I love you, Mom.
Everyone wants to know whether JD's gonna run for office.
Who's everyone?
Everyone. Just everyone. Trust me. I speak to them.
Okay.
I have not yet met JD Vance, although we have a podcast planned. I have read his book, however, much of it twice.
I remember when I was being raised by my grandmother, when she didn't have enough money to turn on the heat some nights.
Hey, come on. Don't you look at you look at me, and you look at me.
What do you think? Should he run for office?
I think someday, if the time is right, and if he really feels that that's the best way that he can contribute to his home, then I think that would be a great idea.
Why do you get uncomfortable when that idea comes up?
My message to young men is don't allow this broken culture to send you a message that you're a bad person because you're a man, because you like to tell a joke, because you like to have a beer with your friends, or because you're competitive.
Don't you think it's more born of hope that you could be a real change agent?
Yeah, no, I think that's the optimistic take on it. I'm very flattered when people ask me, and you never say never, but it's just not something that I think about doing right now.
I also watched his debate with Governor Walz, the Democrat VP candidate, very carefully.
I didn't know how Walz was going to get out of it, because it was clear to me that he would do two things. He would politely destroy Walz, and then the second thing, he would dispel all of these smears and slurs against him, that he was mean, that he was crazy, that he was not a nice person. He's a very pleasant person.
You're getting away with this every time.
I told you that I would do better.
You always say that. You're lying.
I always try.
Jordan Peterson, a well-known Canadian psychologist, has openly discussed his admiration for JD Vance, focusing on the man's remarkable intelligence and the strength of his personal background. He regards Vance as someone who stands out due to his sharp mind, which has clearly guided him through significant achievements in life. For Peterson, Vance is a shining example of conscientiousness, that vital blend of diligence, responsibility, and perseverance that psychologists often link to long-term success and the ability to rise through societal ranks. Beyond these traits, Peterson frames Vance as a powerful representation of upward mobility, a figure who has transcended his modest beginnings to carve out a place of influence and respect. Vance's story resonates deeply with Peterson's views on personal growth, embodying the kind of self-made triumph that inspires others to pursue their own paths.
The first thing to understand about Vance, like Vivek, like Kennedy, like Musk, is his intelligence. You don't pull yourself out of the serious backwoods of Appalachia and graduate from law school at Yale without some 95th or even 99th percentile intelligence.
Vance's father abandoned him. His mother was locked in an endless cycle of drug abuse that escalated to heroin. The toll it took on her young son is seared into memory.
I'm proud to say that tonight my mom is here. 10 years, clean and sober. I love you, Mom.
He also appears mature for his age, even more so than Vivek, for whom he is perhaps a match in raw cognitive power. I suspect as well that JD is highly conscientious, as it is that trait, second only to intelligence, which best predicts upward mobility.
Cultural message is, I think that it wants to turn everybody, into, whether male or female, into androgynous idiots who think the same, talk the same, and act the same. We actually think God made male and female for a purpose, and we want you guys to thrive as young men and as young women, and we're going to help with our public policy to make it possible to do that.
Given where he came from, JD Vance should have been a grim statistic. His parents grew up poor in rural Kentucky. His own tough childhood was in the Rust Belt ruins of Ohio. But Vance escaped what he calls his cultural inheritance.
And he is certainly the poster child for the American dream in the land where anyone can become president. He is as well extroverted, particularly on the assertiveness side rather than enthusiastic, and appears both more compassionate and perhaps more polite than Trump and Vivek. Vance writes with real love of the people in his life in Hillbilly Elegy, which is genuinely a people rather than idea-centered book. That is not a criticism, by the way, merely an observation, as I have already commented positively on his intelligence.
When I finished the book, I felt a little worried about you.
Why?
I wondered if you had really dealt with everything.
That's interesting.
And when I met with Lindsay, she wondered too.
The honest answer is that I probably haven't dealt with everything, but that's part of growing up and living your life, is you're constantly dealing with this stuff and you're constantly working through it. The book is not an effort to sort of finally work through all of these things that happened when I was a kid. It's the beginning of an effort that will probably take me for the rest of my life, and I'm okay with that.
I think the Republican vice presidential contender will bring a whole other level of concern for the working class to the Trump X-Men team, not least because he is not dismissive of his past, as so many who have escaped upward tend to be. Joining the elites in their contempt for the workers and the inhabitants of the lower rungs of the economic ladder, I detected a profound absence of such dismissive sentiment in Hillbilly Elegy, a work that was instead characterized by the substantive gratitude of the well-integrated personality.
How I know that America is back is because we have a 40-year-old vice president of the United States who uses terms like androgynous idiot from the nation's largest conservative political gathering there. I think that the war on men is absolutely over. JD Vance is the perfect vice president to try to make manliness in America great again. This is someone who is 40 years old, who comes from the Rust Belt there. He wrote about this at great length in his best-selling memoir, Hillbilly Elegy. He knows exactly what young men have been dealing with for the past 20 years. He also knows just how badly the Obama, Biden, Kamala Harris manifestation of the Democratic Party has commenced and waged a prolific and hideous war on men.
Vance is also a very good speaker. That's the extroversion, as well as raw cognitive power. Fast on his feet, and also no pushover, despite his people-centered outlook. He holds his temper very well.
It's those that were closest to Donald Trump that understand how dangerous he is when the world is this dangerous. Donald Trump said he's unfit for the highest office. That was Senator Vance. What we've seen out of Vice President Harris is we've seen steady leadership.
So he appears low in the neuroticism aspect of volatility, more stable in that regard than the Donald, whom he defended in his debate better than the former president managed for himself.
His chief of staff, John Kelly, said that he was the most flawed human being he'd ever met. And both of his secretaries of defense and his national security advisors said he should be nowhere near the White House.
As much as Governor Walz just accused Donald Trump of being an agent of chaos, Donald Trump actually delivered stability in the world, and he did it by establishing effective deterrence.
And has also overcome many serious obstacles in his uphill climb. Thus, he appears low as well in withdrawal.
At this point in the year 2025, with Donald Trump as president, JD Vance as vice president, I think we can definitively say that the war on men, as we have seen here in America, is over.
Vance is another person who, like Tulsi Gabbard, is unlikely to panic under difficult conditions. This is a very positive attribute in a leader. He is another person likely to be a steadying managerial hand, balancing the dangerous brilliance of some of the other members of the Trump coterie.
Do you agree with Dr. Peterson's psychoanalysis of JD Vance? He's a man who's never afraid to speak his mind with conviction. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching.